History's greatest comebacks, from defeat to glory. History remembers the victors, but it never forgets the ones who came back from the edge. What do you do when the world counts you out? When you've lost the battle, your name is in ruins, and your enemies stand victorious? Some fade into obscurity. But a few, just a few, rise again. Stronger. Smarter. Hungrier. This is the story of those rare comebacks that defied all odds. The fallen who rewrote their destiny. The defeated who became legends. Welcome to history's greatest comebacks, from defeat to glory. Let's journey through the most jaw-dropping turnarounds in human history. And by the end, you'll understand one timeless truth. No defeat is final, unless you accept it. 1. Winston Churchill, the outcast who saved the world. Winston Churchill wasn't always the Lion of Britain. In fact, during World War I, his political career was hanging by a thread. As First Lord of the Admiralty, Churchill pushed for the Gallipoli campaign, a military disaster that cost over 100,000 Allied casualties. He was forced to resign. Ridiculed. Abandoned. A national disgrace. He could have retired in shame. Instead, he went to the trenches of the Western Front. Yes, this former top commander literally volunteered to fight as a soldier, facing bullets alongside the average man. Fast forward 25 years. In 1940, with Nazi Germany steamrolling through Europe and Britain on the brink of collapse, Churchill was brought back as Prime Minister. Why? Because he was the only one bold enough to fight. And he delivered. His speeches galvanized a broken nation. His leadership held off Hitler when Britain stood alone. He went from national outcast to national savior. Churchill's comeback teaches us this. Failure doesn't define you, your fight does. 2. Japan, from atomic devastation to global power. August 1945. Hiroshima and Nagasaki are flattened. Over 200,000 lives lost. Japan, once a mighty empire, is occupied and humiliated. Everything, economy, infrastructure, morale, was destroyed. But within a generation, Japan rose from the ashes. Through bold reforms, discipline, and a culture that prized innovation, Japan rebuilt itself, not as a military power, but an economic juggernaut. By the 1980s, Japan had become the second largest economy in the world. The very country devastated by war was now setting global standards in technology, manufacturing, and education. They turned defeat into a platform for reinvention. And that's the lesson. When your world is reduced to rubble, you're free to build something entirely new. 3. Theodore Roosevelt, from sickly child to bull moose. As a child, Theodore Roosevelt had asthma so severe, he nearly died several times. Doctors told him he wouldn't live a normal life. He was weak, skinny, and constantly ill. But young Teddy made a choice. He would build his body and mind into a fortress. He trained relentlessly, lifted weights, learned boxing, rode horses, hunted in the wild. And he didn't stop there. After suffering the tragic deaths of both his wife and mother on the same day in 1884, Roosevelt disappeared into the Badlands. Everyone thought he was done. Instead, he returned tougher than ever, launching a political career that would lead to the presidency. By 42, he became the youngest U.S. president in history. Roosevelt's story is raw proof that the greatest power is the one you forge inside yourself. 4. The Byzantine Empire, the empire that refused to die. In 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire collapsed under barbarian invasions. But its eastern half, the Byzantine Empire, didn't just survive, it thrived for another 1,000 years. Why? Because it adapted. While Rome fell to chaos, Constantinople built walls, literally and figuratively. Under Emperor Justinian in the 6th century, Byzantium launched a comeback for the ages. His armies reconquered parts of Italy, North Africa, and Spain. He reformed the legal system, built the architectural marvel Hagia Sophia, and revived Roman glory in a new form. The message? Even when your foundations collapse, your legacy can be reborn, if you're willing to rebuild. 5. Nelson Mandela, from prisoner to president. For 27 years, Nelson Mandela sat in prison. A symbol of resistance, yet silenced. Most thought he'd never walk free. And if he did, surely he'd be broken, bitter, or too old to matter. They were wrong. When apartheid collapsed, Mandela emerged not with revenge, but with reconciliation. He ran for president in 1994 and won. The man once branded a terrorist became the father of a new South Africa. What made it a true comeback wasn't just the power, it was the forgiveness. Mandela's legacy reminds us, you can rise and lift others as you do. 6. Thomas Edison, 1,000 failures, 1 light bulb. Thomas Edison wasn't an overnight genius. His path was filled with failure. He tested over 1,000 different materials before creating a successful light bulb filament. People laughed at his obsession. Investors lost faith. Even his teachers called him too slow. But he saw every failure as data. Each setback narrowed the path forward. When asked about his repeated failures, Edison said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." In the end, his persistence lit up the world. And that's the eternal truth. Rejection isn't the opposite of success, it's the path to it. 7. Abraham Lincoln, the man who lost everything. Until he didn't. Before he became the face on the penny, Abraham Lincoln was a political failure. Lost his job. Lost multiple elections. Suffered a nervous breakdown. Declared bankruptcy. People mocked him. His own party doubted him. But he kept showing up. In 1860, he was elected president. By 1865, he had ended slavery and preserved the Union. Lincoln's comeback wasn't flashy, it was steady, painful, and slow. But it changed the world. Never mistake slow progress for no progress. 8. Lech Walesa, the shipyard electrician who toppled a regime. In 1980s Poland, the communist regime seemed invincible. Speaking out meant prison, or worse. But one electrician, Lech Walesa, dared to protest. He led the Solidarity Trade Union, organized strikes, and got arrested. The regime thought they'd crushed him. Instead, he kept fighting underground. By 1989, his movement brought down communism in Poland without firing a single shot. Lech Walesa became president. The working man who changed history. This comeback shows, you don't need an army to win, just the courage to stand. 9. Harriet Tubman, from fugitive to freedom fighter. Born into slavery, Harriet Tubman escaped in 1849. She could have vanished into a quiet life. But she didn't. She returned again and again to lead over 70 enslaved people to freedom. When the Civil War erupted, she became a spy, a scout, and even led a military raid, becoming the first woman to do so in U.S. history. Tubman's comeback wasn't just personal, it was historical. Her legacy is immortal. Freedom is a journey, and the brave lead the way. 10. Germany, from World War II ruins to European leader. In 1945, Germany lay in ruins. Bombed cities. Divided land. Shamed identity. But what followed was a resurrection. West Germany, aided by the Marshall Plan and driven by intense rebuilding, became a model of innovation, democracy, and economic growth. Even after reunification in 1990, Germany continued to rise, becoming the heart of the European Union. Today, it stands as a global leader. Even the darkest past doesn't determine your future. What ties all these stories together? Not luck. Not fate. Resilience. When defeat came knocking, they didn't run. They regrouped, refocused, and came back stronger. You don't need to be famous to have a comeback. Your personal story, your struggle, matters just as much. If these stories moved you, inspired you, or sparked something deep inside, hit that like button. Subscribe for more untold history. And in the comments, tell us, what's the greatest comeback you've ever witnessed or lived through? Because history isn't just written by the victors. It's written by the comeback kings and queens. And your story might be next.